Good evening, Mrs. Makkar. How are you? Priya?
Good evening, Harinderji. Good evening. How I'm good.
Good. It's so good to see you. I've heard so much about you, but I think first
it's
time we are meeting virtually.
yes. So I think for the last almost more than 1.5 years,
Right.
we are everywhere virtually.
That's true, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so good to, hear your voice and see you.
Same here. I've been attending not all, but whenever possible, I get a chance.
Right.
So you have been really organizing wonderful webinars, very relevant topics, I should say.
We try to, pick up topics which are relevant to K-12 education, as far as possible.
Absolutely.
And even the principal at HDFC Bangalore, I think Mrs. Parvati is there, right?
Sisha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know her because for some time we were together. She was working for Orchids and I was also with the same group.
Oh, yeah.
So
she's the founder principal of our Bangalore school.
Right.
Yeah. So nice.
It's a small world.
Small world, yeah.
And God has made it round so that somewhere you tend to meet
each other. Good. Anything that you would like to tell me to be careful or how? I do not know.
It's a very casual conversation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing like this. The basic guidelines have already, the flow, format, and everything I've shared with you. And I'm sure you must have gone through that.
Yeah, right? I have gone through that. Yeah. We didn't get much time since the morning. We had so many meetings, our own internal meetings.
So. Right. No, I can empathize. I've been in the same, a part of the same fraternity, so can very well imagine.
So we can already, are we live? Because I can see there are 67.
Yes, we are live, but we start exactly at 5 and we wrap it up by 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for the other, panelists also to join us.
Yeah. So light, seat, everything is fine. You wanted to, you wrote.
Yes. You're looking good and I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's good enough.
That's all. Yeah. Priya, can you call up the other, message the other two panelists?
Sure.
Once, yeah. Thank you. Priya, I just received a message from Mrs. Amardeep Kalo. If you could share the Zoom link with her again.
Ma'am, I do not have her WhatsApp number.
I'll just forward that to you.
Surely. Thank you.
So how's the weather? Is it still raining in
हमसे बार-बार वेदर के बारे में पूछ के ना फिर आप हमारे को परेशान करते हो.
तभी उन्होंने मुझे लगता है कैमरा स्विच ऑफ कर दिया. It rained quite a bit yesterday, right?
Yeah, it did rain something, but then you make sure that we are feeling bad and you are enjoying your weather in the hill stations.
Yes, it's really pleasant here.
Trust me, it just snowed yesterday in Delhi.
Wow. Good evening, Amardeep. How are you? You're muted.
I know. Oh, thank you. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Amardeep. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And don't believe what Atul says. Yeah, and don't believe what Atul says about snowfall and everything.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that you feel bad about not being in Delhi.
So I'm sitting at a place where there is snowfall actually, on the higher reaches. I am near Dharamshala for a holiday at present. I mean, I've been on a holiday for the last 2 months.
Oh, wow.
See, the plus side of the pandemic that you can work from home.
Oh, that's good. Well, I live in a place where it's going to start snowing in about a month.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi,
Good evening, Shilpi.
Good evening, Shilpi, and good evening, Anita ji. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Good evening. My pleasure. All my pleasure.
Hi, Anita.
Hi. Hello, Dr. Amardeep.
Oh, we can drop the doctor, I think.
Right? Good.
We'd rather not drop that part of.
Yes.
Okay, well. So I'm curious, Harinder, how did you find me?
On LinkedIn.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the best place to find professionals, you know. Not that I am,
No,
you know,
so
sort of
I'll answer,
marketing. Yeah,
I'll answer that question in a little bit more crisp manner.
please, please.
So what we do is every time we have these topics, okay, there are sometimes, and we want authentic experts and authentic practitioners to come and talk about the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times it appears to us that the best place is to get people associated with research and more on the advanced stage of some topic. So Harinder does a lot of effort in figuring out, who the panelists should be and they should be related to the topic. So that at the end of the day, what we really want to achieve is provide accurate and updated information to our audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And you are very well aware of the kind of research that happens in India in terms of education, right?
Right.
So it is always a pleasure, when we have somebody who's at the forefront of a particular topic to come in and give us that insight, but also being a little bit pragmatic towards the problem and not just being, theoretical and philosophical about it. So
Mm-hmm.
we would like to see how does that fit into our Indian education system. But the answer to the question is Harinder struggles every day to make sure that we have the best people on our show. And I think she succeeds every time.
Well,
Thank you so much, Atul, for for being so generous in your praise. Good evening, Robert. How are you?
Hello, how are you? I'm fine.
Hi, Robert, and welcome back.
Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be asked back.
And I've updated Atul that you have a lot of experience working in the Indian education domain too.
Not so much a lot, but maybe I have a lot to say about it.
Yeah, okay.
Slightly different.
The idea is really for this particular topic, the way we'll do it, even in the conversation type, it'll be good if we can be crisp and short to the point so we can address all the topics. The real three important topics that we would like to, or maybe three important questions we would like to cover in, let's say, about 40 minutes is why is it important for us to switch to competency-based education? Why is it really important for India to do that? Why is it important for every teacher to do that, every school to do that? So the importance of it. And then also, how do we do it? Because we are a system which is totally engulfed in rote memorization. And we, in fact, to be honest, I am a product of that system. And I could actually finish my PhD in mathematics from the US. So what is wrong with that system? That's a question mark in a lot of people's head. That look, if it has worked for 75 years, why change it now? So, and how would that transition look like? Is it going to be immediate as envisaged by the national education policy? Or will it happen in phases? And what are the kind of challenges or solutions or mindsets that students, schools, teachers, parents would need to develop. Because it's not just the school system, it's also parents and students who are absolutely comfortable with rote memorization and passing an exam. So there are a lot of stakeholders. So what is the kind of transition that they'll have to? I know this is a lot to cover in 40 minutes, but I'm sure with the kind of experiences you guys have, we'll be able to do justice and find answers to some of these questions. So that's the premise.
Right. Very good.
And we are very punctual. So in 1 minute, I think Harinder is about to begin, right?
Yes. I'm looking at the clock.
So Harinder, quick question. Do you want us to introduce ourselves or are you going to introduce us?
I'm going to introduce you. In case you want to add something to it, you're most welcome to do that.
Okay.
But I'm sure you have gone through the email which I shared with all of you, right?
So Dr. Callon, I just want to say that usually, typically in our webinars, we do a news reader kind of an introduction.
Yes.
And not really read out the bio of a person. So I think that makes us focus on the topic. So if we leave out anything, please do mention that.
No, I like that. I do like that.
Good to go.
Yes. So good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the 56th episode of Friday at 5. Thank you so much for investing your time with us on a Friday evening. Friday at 5 is India's most insightful e-convo for educators and is sponsored by S. Chand Group, India's largest publishing house. S. Chand Group's aims at nurturing people at all levels by facilitating their growth and needs, as it thoroughly believes that people are the greatest strength to any organization. Today, we have an amazing panel on competency-based education who have rich knowledge and experience on this subject and are proponents of competency-based learning. During the next 1 hour, we'll be talking with them about the 7 traits of competency-based education and the concepts behind it. So here's the format to give you an idea of what to expect. I'll take a few minutes to briefly introduce each of the panelists and our supporting team members. Thereafter, for the next 40 minutes, Dr. Atul Nischur, as the moderator, will set the context of the session and kick off the conversation with questions to the panelists for crisp, concise replies. Once that is over, we take up questions asked by the audience. At the end, each panelist gets 1 minute to make a closing statement, and we wrap up the show at 6 p.m. So before we dive into the panel discussion, let me quickly introduce you to the panelists. Mrs. Amardeep Kalon, a globally recognized leader in competency-based education, a member of Board of Directors and Competency-Based Education Network, and a published author. She is joining us from Unity College from Maine, United States, where she is the dean. She is an experienced researcher and possesses extensive experience through the statewide fast-track project in building and supporting online competency-based education programs and promoting academic innovation for learner success, along with working to create CBE programs in a digital learning ecosystem. Mrs. Amardeep, we are so glad to have you here with us today. Mr. Robert Thorne is joining us from Iskandar. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Turkey. Okay. One of Turkey's largest ports on the Mediterranean. Robert is a distinguished international educator with more than 2 decades of varied experience in K-12 education and is currently the founding director of the organization Developing Real Learners, through which he helps schools build learning communities that enable young people to become the best holistic learners they can be. He coaches leaders, educators, and helps schools become learning communities, leading to transformation. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us today. And of course, we have Mrs. Anita Makkar, who's presently engaged as an education leader and principal at the HDFC School, Gurugram. Those of us who are familiar with the leading schools of our country, I'm sure are familiar with the name and her work. She has a rich experience of 3 decades in K-12 education domain and carries a strong and focused vision for holistic education. A true visionary in action, she continues to inspire others with her clear-sightedness, open-mindedness, positivity, and leadership. Mrs. Anita, we are truly delighted to have you on Friday at 5. I would also like to introduce our team, Dr. Atul Nischal, who is the founder director of International Council of School Leadership and will be moderating the session today. Mrs. Shilpi Sood Gill, a leading progressive school leader and principal at the Shri Ram Universal School, Ludhiana. She'll be replying to your chats and sharing knowledge nuggets with you during today's session. And Ms. Priya Gupta provides technical support and helps us all put Friday at 5 together. So now I invite Dr. Atul to take the session forward. Over to you, Atul.
Thank you so much, Harinder, for a nice kickoff. As soon as the National Education Policy 2020 came out in India, and all of us got a chance to read it, and luckily it came out during COVID-19 pandemic, and we had some time on our hands. So we thought, why not read the policy? Because last time when NCF 2005 had come, I think very few of us actually read it or discussed it. But one of the things that we noticed in this particular policy was recurrence of a theme. And the theme was that we need to move away from the culture of rote memorization. Now, that was a very good step because a lot of us had been frustrated with the rote memorization system. But we could not put an end to it because the policy framework, the curriculum, the assessment framework, especially the largest board, which is CBSE, really indirectly assisted rote memorization. And the chase, the blinded rat race to get more marks was really the norm which had been set up in the country, to the extent that there were crash courses where you could finish 1 year's program, academic learning in 3 months and still get 90% marks in CBSE exam. So all the educationists, all teachers were actually feeling suffocated by it, but didn't know what to do. So that came out as a very welcome relief that at a national level, we realized that the future is not about rote memorization and we need to do something. The alternative provided to us was competency-based education, which is known by different terms in different areas. It's also called proficiency-based education. It's also called mastery-based education. It's also sometimes referred to as outcome-based education. So there are different terminologies that are used. And in fact, the NEP also uses multiple terminologies. Well, some of us actually thought that this is like in the past 75 years and with all the previous policies, we all thought that this is going to stay on paper and nothing is going to happen about it. So we can go about doing our business as usual. And then suddenly CBSE came up with a booklet, a 384-page booklet, which they published very recently. By the way, don't really quote me on 384. I think it was more than 300 and less than 400. And 384 seems like a good number to me, so I said that. But that might not be factually correct, by the way. But it came up with a pretty big booklet, competency-based education for grades, I think up to 10th. Okay, so this is a big booklet that has come up. And there it is explained what competency-based education is all about. So they have defined the competency as a larger framework, not just knowledge, but knowledge, skills, attitudes, behavior that a student should demonstrate on achieving a particular learning outcome to the desired level of proficiency. Okay, so that's how all these words fit in. So every learning outcome has different levels of proficiency, and if a student achieves that level of proficiency, he demonstrates certain behavior. And when I say behavior, I'm talking about learning behavior, attitude towards learning, towards a subject, right? Knowledge, obviously, and skills. Now, this has expanded the scope of what we teach in our schools, because now if the assessment is going to be competency based, then obviously it is important that learning has to be competency based, because you can only assess competency based competencies if you are developing those competencies at the first place. And that means a very huge systemic change in almost everything that we do. So my first question, actually, and I'm going to put that question to Dr. Calhoun, is, do we really need it? Or is it one of those, concepts that's going to weather down with time? Or is it something that is going to stick with us and we must definitely think seriously about flipping it? Why do we need competency-based?
Thanks, Atul. Thanks for that introduction to the policy, the education policy as well. So this is not new. CBE is not new. If you look at medical education, it's all competency-based, has been from the beginning. CBE is basically a way of measuring what you have learned. So I can tell you how to ride a bicycle, right? I can tell you, put your foot on the pedal, get on the bike, and this is how you pedal. But till I actually put you on a bicycle and have you ride the bicycle, you haven't learned it. So competency-based education takes away the focus from pure time. And it takes away the focus from seat time and puts all the focus on learning. And I think it's absolutely necessary. It's definitely not a fad. And this is a question, by the way, we hear in the US as well. When I've been around the country presenting in the US, there are several people who will come to the presentations and say, well, this is just a fad, it's going to pass. It's not, because what companies are demanding are, give me a graduate who knows what to do. Give me a student who can hit the ground running when they get to college, and we don't have to repeat half the concepts of high school with them. We don't have to give them a remedial education in college. So competency-based education in higher ed is far more popular in the US than in the K-12, but it's catching on very quickly in the K-12. In fact, there are some states that have mandated CBE in the K-12 space. So I do believe that it's absolutely necessary, because when I teach a student, I'm giving the student knowledge. But with CBE, I'm testing if the student can apply that knowledge, can actually perform a task with that knowledge, whether the task is writing a report, whether the task is performing some workforce manual type task, whether it's an engineering task, an architectural, liberal arts, any area you can apply CBE and test a student's learning and measure a student's learning. It does require intentional design though. And that is the hard part of CBE.
Yeah. And let me just ask you one more question. I think you've very clearly told us that we need to be serious about it because it's going to stay.
Yes.
Because Google and Facebook and some other big companies have already started saying that, look, guys, we don't care about the university degree.
Yes.
Okay, we don't care about your educational, degrees that you have collected in life.
Right.
If you can do these things, we are ready to welcome you into our organizations. And I think there are going to be a lot more organizations that have realized that. So there is a definite need to do that. Now, the big question is the definition of competency. So there are multiple, while I was doing my research, there were multiple ways people interpret competency-based education. The one definition that CBSE has picked up is the one that was given by Aurora Institute, and they had mentioned 7 characteristics, because we need to understand what it really means, right? For us to be able to make that transition. A lot of people misunderstand competency-based education as merely being anywhere, anytime learning, while that's just probably one component of it, right? So
Yeah.
can you just elaborate on what does it, let's just go a little bit stepwise. What does it take? What does it mean?
So the first thing is it has to be measurable. So when a competency has to be measurable. So when we say, when we are writing outcomes, the student will learn, right? Learn is not a measurable outcome, right? A student will effectively make a presentation. Effectively is not a measurable outcome. Understand is not a measurable outcome, right? But if I say a student will demonstrate the ability to do this, or a student will draw a whatever it is that I want to measure, and a student will create, a student will build, a student will write. So, and we all know about Bloom's taxonomy. So you have the various levels of measurement on Bloom's taxonomy. And until a new measure comes about, a new system of measuring outcomes comes about, we are stuck with Bloom's taxonomy. So it's measurable. That's the very key characteristic of competency-based education, right? The second is it's designed in such a way for a student to progress effectively, where a student can complete one complete competency. It's self-contained, the competency, right? And the student can complete one competency before moving on to the next. There is no gray area between the two, The third is, when we talk about on anytime, anywhere, online, CBE doesn't have to be online. Right now I'm setting up a new institute at Unity College in Maine, which is all CBE, which is in HighFlex, which is partly face-to-face, and students can remote into the class. And then also students can take the same class later on, which is a live lecture class, right? So CBE doesn't have to be online. It doesn't have to be self-paced. Although that is the crux of CBE in many institutions that have set it up. It can be a system that's within the credit hour, within the classroom, that can be intentionally designed to test the student's knowledge. That is the heart of CBE, is to measure and assess and test the knowledge of the student. Knowledge, skills, tasks, 3 important things in CBE. I know I'm not going down the list of 7 characteristics, but I just want to give you the essence of competency-based. And the important thing is assessments. We've all seen that famous cartoon where there's a whale, an elephant, a fish, a bird, and the assessor is telling them, to be fair, climb the tree. Right? And the assessments have to be authentic, which actually measure workplace type learning. Or in the case of K-12, which actually measure what they would need to know before they can move on to the next topic.
So I think I'm going to come back to this again on the assessment part once more, because that's also going to be a challenge. It's going to be a huge challenge that our teachers, equipped or empowered or enabled to create such assessment. I mean, that's a very big question. So it's not easy to create competency based. But let me quickly go to Robert for a minute. Robert, you are working with, your organization works with developing real learners, and I like that wonderful word that you use. Congratulations for keeping that name. Now, in competency based education, we are also looking at attitudes and behavior of learners. So it's very easy. I won't say it's very easy. it's relatively easy for our education system to measure knowledge and measure skills because they can be demonstrated. How do we really go about quantifying, measuring, or assessing behavior and attitude of real learners?
It's a very good question. It was one of the things I'd like to pick up on with Dr. Amardeep. I think we have to be very responsible and very careful about what we say. It's good to have definitions. But we're dealing with a lot of teachers who are going to need a lot of help slowly to gradually take these ideas and these concepts on board. Already good teachers are assessing a child's attitudes and behaviors naturally because these are human things to do. Okay, so you see, you look, you find evidence, you're collecting evidence all the time. Now, is that evidence explicit? No, it's not. It's very difficult to make it explicit. I think it's really, why I say it's dangerous is it's dangerous because if you know something is good, if you know that if you teach in a certain way, a child's curiosity is going to be allowed to blossom, but you have no idea of how to test that curiosity, to assess that curiosity, then you don't stop doing it. You've got to keep doing it. You know, you've got to, yes, that's great. Okay. And then let some experts come in and work out how to assess it. So don't stop, whatever you do, don't stop doing that. There is a way, of course. You ask the children and you talk about, you make explicit the things that you want to develop. And I think that is part of obviously of competency-based learning, is that the young people, they have to be in on what it is that they have to be able to do, to know, how am I going to be, how am I improving? In what way am I improving? And so therefore they need to be literate in the sense of knowing themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, you know, when I look back on what I've done, do I feel I'm becoming a more curious person? Can I use my curiosity in a better way?
Right.
You know, so I'm picking curiosity because it's one of those things that a lot of teachers say, oh, you know, how do you measure it? How do you develop it? You know, so, but and the other attributes that I deal with, they are to various degrees accessible. You can assess them, but very often it comes down to sometimes qualitatively assessing the evidence. Do you seem to be, do you feel, or are you becoming, what evidence do you have that you are becoming having more empathy?
Right. So I think one of the things that I hear you say is that a lot of competency-based education, might already put the learner in the center of the learning process. So it's already learner-centric by design.
I think we have to gradually bring them in, you know, as they get older. Yeah.
Yes. So one of the requirement is that the learner has to be an active learner.
Sorry.
Right?
May I say, also, the other thing is that, of course, they're not going to be with you for the rest of their lives. And the idea is that you're helping them to develop, to become learners for life.
Yes.
And I'm saying that as opposed to lifelong learners. We're all lifelong learners, but so they're actually going to be active in learning and assessing how you are developing.
Right.
Is part of, for example, what my organization does is, so there's learner-centered education, but there's learner development-centered education. So you're letting kids leave the school with the knowledge with the understanding of how to continue developing as a learner. And so this assessment, this collection of evidence of knowing yourself, that is of course part of it.
So does that fundamentally change the role of the teacher in the education process? Does it really make me lose control and say, look, I now need to be a mentor and a facilitator. A sage on the stage is not going to work. Okay. So we have been talking about these terms for a very long time. Does competency-based education really is going to force us to do it?
I would just like to say that I think the best way for India, not just India, other countries to go forward is to try to do this in a community-based way. So the school as a community, as a learning community, where people respect each other, but to align, to find out what you were saying, actually, the very first question you asked, is this necessary for us? That is the question. You have to say, what is our purpose as a school? What are we doing? So what sort of education do young people really need? That's a question you can ask them. That's a question you can ask your teachers. And then, and then to be able to, knowing that, you then say, okay, do we all agree on what the purpose of education is? And if it's to develop young people who have all of these competencies, all of these attitudes, skills, attributes, as I call them, I think most people will agree, yes, of course, it's great for people to collaborate, to communicate, to do all of these things. So what you're doing as a teacher, so for example, if I'm a teacher who's been teaching for 40 years, standing at the front, telling the kids what to do, okay, I would start off with what I call the golden process. The first thing is, okay, I understand what this competency-based learning is, what the NEP is telling me to do. The first thing I've got to think of is, what do I do already that fits with that? That is good. Am I, all right, my primary thing that I see myself doing is standing at the front telling kids to learn this, learn this, learn this, okay? But I do say hello to them in the morning. I do have a joke with them. I do get to know with them. I do do certain things with them that help these competencies, to help these attributes.
Right.
So that's my starting point. Even though I'm going to retire next year and I've been doing the same thing for 40 years, I see the transformation has to be non-threatening to a degree, and it has to be inclusive, to bring our teachers along,
right?
Not to suddenly get rid of them, because you have to be very careful, because this has happened before in other places, that there's an excuse for people to get rid of a lot of teachers that they don't respect.
Right.
We don't need to do that.
I think that's a very valid point. Let me bring in Mrs. Makkar for a minute. So we have had a very good and enlightening start to this. Now, as a seasoned school leader, who has worked with all kinds of schools, right? And you have a very good understanding of the psyche of teachers, psyche of parents, the psyche of students. And if a teacher, so I have multiple questions for you. And all these questions have been created by Dr. Callon and Robert. So I didn't think of it, and they created these questions in my mind now. So my first question is that if a teacher comes and asks you that, ma'am, isn't competency-based education just the same as higher order thinking skills that we have been talking for so long? If you're just going to be focusing on the higher domains of Bloom's taxonomy to achieve competency-based education, so what's the big difference that is happening, right? So that's one question that teachers would have, because they want to relate it to what they've been doing. Okay, that's my first question. The second question is, do you see as a school leader that the Indian education system is ready to adopt competency-based education? Or is it going to be, again, one of the things that we will talk about in the future, that we tried, but it didn't work, just the way CCE and some initiatives never seemed to work? Okay. What's your thought on that, on both these aspects?
Yeah. First, I'll answer your second question. When you say, would this NEP-based policies, would they work in today's time? Atul, when NCF 2005 came, it is 16 years ago. And very few people knew about it. Very few educations, they got to know about it because we got copies from NCERT to read and position papers to read. So that was one thing. Today, we all are talking about NEP 2020, and today's child is very different from a child 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Today's child is a global child. So tomorrow he goes anywhere. It's not how much he knows, but what is important is what is his or her attitude towards learning. Whether the child can solve problems or not, whether the child can bring a change in the community, can the child impact the community in a positive way. I give you an example. Today, if we talk about global warming, now every child is capable of asking, what is global warming? But how many, if this competency-based education is not there, how many children would ask you, why should I bother about global warming? It is not affecting me personally. I have all the comforts. Then, if you ask them, what are the factors that are affecting global warming? And then what I can do to mitigate global warming. So when you start asking this, a teacher starts asking this question, children start asking this question, there would be a change in the attitude of children, of educators, of parents, and the entire community. So that's the reason that NEP 2020 would definitely work, because we are moving towards those analytical skills, problem solving skills, and of course, our assessment system would definitely impact our teaching and the transaction of curriculum in the classrooms. And it is coming, and I would say in a short span of time, the way CBSE is bringing up programs, especially the change in the assessment pattern, that is, it's really, really very fast. So we also have to be, have to move at the same pace, and at the change that is coming, adaptability has to be there. So I have no doubt about it that this NEP 2020 is definitely going to change the education space.
Great.
To answer your first question, the difference between higher order thinking skills and competency-based items, the difference is what everybody understood a few years ago, that higher order thinking skills is a difficult question, which would test your application, but nobody thought that higher order thinking skill questions can also encompass your problem solving, your communication, your technologically based. So all these skills, they can be tested with competency based items. So this is the difference. And I know this is a humongous task, that to train all our educators nationwide. So this is, I hope.
I think you're being absolutely right. And now the last 10 minutes I want to spend actually asking each one of you. So I have 3 questions. I would like Dr. Kellon to, probably stress on how should schools as a organization, because you're the dean of a institute, university, and you have worked at an institution where you have the bigger picture. So how do schools in India, and you're very well aware of the different profile of schools in India, right? We have and we have teachers who are joining us from rural places also. There are government schools also, there are private schools also, there are air-conditioned schools also, and there are schools which don't have fans also. So that's the kind of country we live in. How should a school leader think about transforming from a rote memorization to a competency-based education? How should schools do it? Robert, I'm going to come to you. What do you think teachers need to think about and do? Because you touched upon this issue briefly initially. So what do teachers need to do to adapt to this system? And then Mrs. Makkar, I'll come back to you and ask, what do we do with students and parents? Because they are very, very crucial stakeholders. And if they don't change, whatever we do is not going to work. So how do we, because even parents are very happy getting notes. They in fact, I know parents who say that if your teacher has not given you 5 pages of notes on a particular day, that means the teacher is not teaching, right? So they look at the notebook and say how much work has happened depends upon the number of pages that have been filled. I mean, these are kind of people that exist. So what do we do with these students and teachers? How do we, students and parents? Robert, you look at the teachers part of it, and I'll start with Dr. Amardeep. Ma'am, how do you think schools should prepare for this transition?
So change management, Atul, is hard, always. Change is the hardest thing human beings do, because as humans, we grow roots where we are. So change has to occur at a macro level and at a micro level, both. Not only do you have to show the value of this to the school teachers, but also to the leaders, to the principals. And, Principal Makkar is here, but, with her, you're preaching to the choir because she already knows the value of this. But I'm sure there are other school leaders out there who are looking at this and thinking, oh, this is yet another thing we have to do, right? The other thing is the disparities, the inequities in the schools that you yourself just touched on. CBE is best enabled by technologies, right? When you're talking about measurement, when you're talking about assessments, technology plays a big role in that. And when you have schools with economic inequities, that technological inequity has to happen first, has to be resolved first. And that's where the Indian government can play a large role. And, companies like, Tata, Amazon, all of these can play a large role by providing grants, by providing incentives. You have to show to teachers and to the school leaders the value of competency-based. You have to show them how it proves that they are teaching what they're teaching, and how it validates what they're teaching. Not only that, it makes it exciting because they can watch the student grow, they can watch the student learn, and they can watch the student progress. It's going to be a complete mind shift. And to talk about a few strategies, trainings are most important. And trainings also have to be competency-based. You can't have a trainer stand in front of a room and drone on about the values of CBE and then not do competency-based trainings, right? So trainings themselves have to be competency-based so that they can see the value right in the training itself. You have to give them the tools, both the technology tools and the knowledge tools to succeed. Because an unfunded mandate is a failed mandate.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about funding in terms of money or funding in terms of time or in terms of training, right? So that's really important. And the third thing is to provide continuous support. When we look at the inequities in school, if you go to Springfield School in Delhi and you go to a rural school, in Haryana, there are so many differences there, and you cannot say one size fits all.
Right. So in that,
you cannot say, right.
Yeah. In that view, do you think? Just a candid question. Do you think the government's desire to have competency-based education throughout India is a well thought of, well planned desire, or is it more of aspiration and we want to be what everybody is trying to be? So let's do it.
Do you want the politically correct answer?
I want an honest answer. People know I myself for being very honest about our views as academics, and we are not politically inclined to anything. I want an honest answer from my audience that, look, is the system really ready for this transition in that sense?
See, the statement has to be followed by intention, has to be followed by action.
Yes.
Right? So the proof lies in the pudding, as the old saying goes, right? So the government has said, we want this, but wanting this doesn't make it happen, right? So they have to put the weight of support behind it. And that support has to be across the board. They can't give the support to the model schools in the cities and then ignore the rural schools.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. And there's a lot that needs to be done at the government level, and also a lot that needs to be done at a school management level also. Before
Right.
things can come down, because whatever happens at the government level with different schools happens with the school management level at a private school, right? So
It has to be a well-coordinated effort, a
Right.
well-funded effort, a well-supported effort,
right,
and the support has to be continuous and persistent.
right. Otherwise, we will end up doing, I think, a disaster. I mean, instead of improving things, there's a quotation in saying in Hindi, "Na yahan ke rahe, na wahan ke
Na
rahe."
wahan ke rahe, right? Dhobi ka kutta na ghar ka na ghar ka, right?
So we will be
Yes,
roaming
exactly.
around with no direction if we don't if we don't follow it up. And that is true for schools also. A half-hearted approach to this transition may actually most likely end up being a disaster, with a lot of stakeholders confused as to what the hell are we trying to achieve and why
Right.
have we messed up our lives.
And it's not fair to ask them to do it without support. It's just not fair.
Yes, so the
It's not
schools-
fair to the teachers, to the students, to the parents, and to the system as a whole. Anyway, I won't take up too much more
No, I
time.
think you're dot on, and thank you for that wonderful, clear answer for the audience. Robert, let's assume for a minute that the prerequisites for this transformation are in place. There is a school. You work with a lot of schools. There is a school that the school management has committed full support to this transition. The school leadership is committed to this transition. And now the onus is on the teachers. Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, we have certain schools who have said, yes, let's do it. We have all the technology in the world. Whatever you guys need, we will give it to you. Let's start changing our systems. What do the teachers do, Robert?
So I thank you for all of those supports. However, I'm just going to go back. I completely agree with Dr. Amadeep. Even without those, it's too late. The cat is out of the bag, and there will be some clashes and disaster and things like that. If people are trying to force, people say, okay, let's go back to what we're doing. Let's stick with what we're doing. It'll be terrible, because kids know nowadays. You can go on YouTube and you see, and this is what your education should be giving you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's out of the bag, and people just get loose. So we can, even without the government, even without the ministry, if the ministry changed and decided or didn't give any money to us or whatever, we still have to think, how are we going to carry on? And so my answer then is the same. What I'm doing at the moment, I'm working on what happens if you are a single learner in a school and you understand this, what can you do? But if nobody else around you does it, if you're a teacher in a school, you're the only one who really gets this, what can you do to influence the school? And and the same for principals and that. So what do? They first of all, you've got to be very clear, what is it that we are after here? What is it that education, what do you want out of education? Now, I've asked kids around the world, what do you want out of education? And they've come up with many different things, but two of the most important things is happiness and success, all right? And we understand what those things are. We know the different levels of happiness. They want to go for the engagement happiness, being part of something bigger. And success, what is that? It's being able to be happy in a nice world. Okay, so how do you make that happen? All right, so then you ask adults, what do you think? And teachers mainly, I've asked, what do you think young people need for happiness and success in these days? And they come out with these lists, and a lot of them are the competencies, the attributes, being good at working with other people, being able to ask questions, being, I say anti-fragile, not resilient. All of these wonderful things. And then you say to them, so do you teach these things? Who teaches these things in your school? And they all go, and they look at each other and they think, okay, so then you find out that they do actually teach these things, but implicitly and to a small degree. And you say, well, what if you made those things explicit? So what if you, and then after that, so when you recognize what you want to do, after you recognize what you are doing, that's okay. And how about making that explicit what you're doing to match these competencies? The next stage is, what can you change? What can you change now? Small, easy change. No, instead of standing there and telling kids things, why don't you get them to tell you? Why don't you get them to come up with their own questions? Why don't you get them to pinpoint what it is they know already about a topic? You know,
Right.
so okay, so why don't you try those things and see what happens in a nice way? And you get the kids, suddenly you've opened up a new resource that the government hasn't given you.
Absolutely.
And that resource are your learners.
Yes.
Your
So
learners. Suddenly
what,
they're on your side, they're engaged, and they start. And then, okay, so you go back to your list of competencies and attributes and things, and you say, okay, what don't I know how to do? And then you come together as a group, and you look on Google, or you hire a professor to come in, and
Good.
you learn it. Okay, so you do the easy things first.
Yeah. So I think the plan that you're suggesting, let me just put it in a one or two lines. So
Yeah.
Just for my own understanding, so I like to paraphrase so that I know I have understood, what is happening. So I think what you're suggesting is that don't look at, rote memory and competency based as a binary system of 0, 1. Okay, it's a continuous system. You start making incremental changes based on your philosophy of education in the school, the needs of your students, and the existing capabilities and abilities of your teachers. And you start tweaking the model slowly. It's a design thinking process. So you start taking it, you do some experiments, see if it's working towards the competency-based model. Are you delivering? Are you teaching that? And then very slowly, incrementally, you start moving towards that journey. So it's not something like a switch where you can just have one and the other. It's a transitional period, more continuum. Have I understood you correctly, Robert?
Yeah, I think, I think that's the safest way. And I don't like the word revolution. An educational revolution is, it leaves people behind, it kills people, people die from a revolution. So a transformation, so that's inclusive. I think that's very good. And what you find is it is a snowball effect.
Right.
And you'll find that people will race ahead, and some people will go slowly, and some people will take their time. But once they get going and they see what it is, then they begin to get involved.
Just
and you find
very quickly, Robert, would you suggest that such a transformation should happen in a school in a phased manner, where we pick up some grades and do that and then move on to the other grades? Or should this be a school-wide transformation on day one?
I think
very quickly,
the way I've approached it is that I've given everything to everybody, and those who pick it up and run with it, you then get them to help the others.
Okay, great. So you empower everybody with the tools or the skills and the knowledge, and let's see who is the fast runner, and then that person leads the change as a transformational team. Anita ji, let me come back to you. Very big question, because unfortunately, parents have now become a very important stakeholder because of the pandemic closures, and also students. We everything that we're doing it for them. So if learner has to be at the center of learning, okay, then he has to be part of the entire change process from day one. I mean, how can you change something for me without making me part of it, right? So how do we work with students and parents during this transformation?
I would say that students are the easiest lot, because it's, as said many times, that they're like a soft clay. You can mold them the way you want them to. So the way we teach them, the same way they would learn. So if it has to be learner-centric, then, and the child has to be in the center of learning, so everything should revolve around the child, and ask the child, understand the child, his or her learning style. That's important. Also, it comes to the personalized learning as well. But when it comes to, you asked a very pertinent question, how to change the system without changing parents, teachers' attitudes. उनको change करना बहुत मुश्किल नहीं है. Because when they are young, they would definitely listen to their teachers. The major task is first to train the teachers. Now, as you rightly said, during pandemic, parents are almost inside our classrooms. And they have observed everything, what goes on in the classroom. And fortunately, they have been appreciative of teachers' efforts. Now, if they understand that my child is able to understand better, he is able to lead his life better, and he is getting the right attitudes in his young age. So parents के साथ engage करना आपको बहुत जरूरी है to make them understand the value of this change.
Ma'am, one question very quick, and then I'm going to hand it over to, because I'm eating up all on Harinder's time of asking questions. Very, very quickly, we are a country where if we give one question in a CBSE exam, which is not part of the textbook, then that question is raised in the Parliament House.
Yes.
That look, why the hell did CBSE ask a question which is not in the book? And now we're suddenly saying that we are going to be assessing on competencies, skills, behavior, attitudes. Will the Janta, will the parents be not on the road and bring an axe to your school and saying, how the hell you test my child on something that you have not taught him? How will you answer that question?
So I would answer this question very simply. Right now, there won't be anything out of syllabus. If it is how you understand the question, what is your understanding, how you are able to solve this problem, how you are thinking. So also at the same time, we are tweaking with the syllabus also. Reducing the content, but we are going deep into the content. That is also going to help parents and children.
So would we need a new competency-based curriculum?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I think that...
And also, I would just say one thing, also the assessment system as well.
Yes, absolutely. And luckily, ICSL does a training program on competency-based assessment. And it's coming out on 25th and 26th of September. Those of you who are interested can sign up for that. And with that, I want to thank all my...
Atul, I just want to add one more thing, which I really liked what Dr. Kahlon said. If whatever our intent, if it is not funded by time, money, support, effort, all this would go waste. If we have started this project of competency-based learning, it must be supported by all stakeholders.
Absolutely. I agree with what she said. But at the same time, I also agree with Robert that, look, as a good teacher, okay, so I think I am, both ways. As a good teacher, if I'm a good math teacher, I would automatically focus on the mathematical competencies of my student, right? How can I not do that? Somewhere I think it's an individual choice, but the individual choice can take you only till a further point. If you want a nationwide transformation, then obviously technology has to come in, training has to come in, and therefore a lot of money has to also be supported. I want to thank Dr. Kahlon, Robert, Mrs. Makkar for a very, very engaging. I think I've also learned a lot during this last 40 minutes. I thank all of you, and I'm going to leave it to Harinder to take up a few questions. Harinder, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Atul. And I have, as usual, I have a long list of questions, but can only take a few because Atul always does this, with my time. Okay, quickly. The first question is for Robert from Dr. R. Kishore Kumar, who's the owner of St. John's Public School, Chennai. How to ensure competency-based learning as a regular focus and a happening phenomenon among school teachers? A regular meal rather than a treat for an occasion. Robert.
I see. Okay. I think Dr. Amardeep had a solution to that. And that is that you need to get your staff together and you need to start talking about this. and looking at the possibilities, really drilling down and understanding what is this. And when you do that, when you start to discuss what these things are, then the ideas, people will start to relate it to them. So the teachers will start to say, ah, yes, oh, I could do that. All right. So by gently having an open conversation, now I've been in schools where that doesn't happen because there's not such a level of trust in the school for that to be able to happen, be able to people openly speak. But I'm sure in this school, it is the case. So you have to have this conversation. You have to get your teachers to begin to relate what is being aimed for, to understand what that is, and then how does that relate to where they are now, what they're doing now, and what they could change to move towards it. And then say, we'll meet again in a week or 2 weeks or so, and let's see what people did. What did people change? What happened when you changed those things? What new ideas do people have over this time that you've been in? And then gradually you can formalize that so that, for example, in one school we've put in a formal thing of action research, where that's what people did. That's how people went about developing themselves.
Right.
Mm.
So you want that they should be a part of the decision-making process to encourage their involvement.
The development-making process.
Development, right.
Yeah, decision-making,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
Development, yeah.
Okay, right. So this is from Asma Zaidi, Vice Principal at Focus High School, Telangana. And this is for Mrs. Anita. In a mixed abilities classroom, competency-based learning requires differentiation. The problem is not with classroom activities, but with assessments and moving further to the next class, especially if a child is highly competent in one subject and average in others. This requires a complete transition of the whole traditional school setup. Please share your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. As we talk about differentiated learning, so we can have the same for differentiated assessment. And we are looking at, now we have to not only look at children who are high achievers. Of course, I am really reminded of a saying that a modern educator has should not cut the jungles, but irrigate the deserts. So it's not only high achievers, you have to reach to every child and understand his or her learning style and accordingly assess them. Differentiated learning, differentiated assessment.
Right. So Lulu Amin Sura, a teacher from Japlong Valley Boarding School in Bangladesh, says that assessment is often cited as the weakest link of competency-based education. How can assessment of performance be improved as assessment potentially drives learning? Mrs. Amardeep, would you like to take her question?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very important question. The assessments have to be intentional. They have to be in CBE, we use a word, authentic assessments. They have to be really authentic. I went to a university in India to consult with them, and they were doing assessments all paper-based, whereas the discipline was a hands-on discipline. So there's a big disconnect there. So assessments have to be thought out, and as I really liked one of the points Robert made, which is something that I've talked about in my workshops as well, is pick your champions. So find the person who does assessment the best, who knows assessment, who can be trained on assessment. Pick that champion first. Let them do it and let them show the way to the others. And a well-designed assessment, an assessment that is designed with the principles of CBE in mind, will automatically show its results, right? But it has to be backed by a competency-based curriculum.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlo. And I think I have to end here and because there's not much time left, though I have nearly 24 more questions, in my list. So I request each panelist to please make the closing statement, starting with Mrs. Makkar.
I'll borrow it from NEP again. The quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. So we have to build up the capacities of our teachers.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kalu.
I think CBE is here. The time is here. The time is now, as they say. And what we have to do, what India has to do is provide the training, provide the support, showcase the champions who are doing this and doing it well, and do it across the board, not just the elite schools, not just the urban schools, but the rural schools as well. And it's going to be a winner.
Thank you. And Robert, your closing statement.
Yes, I would say set your vision for your school if you don't have one already. A vision, look at that vision statement. And if it says we're out set to create great citizens and fulfill the potential of our children, that's what you have to unpack and do.
Right. A special thanks to all the panelists for such an, sorry.
Harinder, do I
Yes, sir.
make a closing statement or no?
Yes, take some of my more time.
No,
Please do. It's all yours.
Closing statement. Okay.
By Dr. Atul Nischal.
Okay, so my closing statement is very simple. So when I heard all this thing and I've been reading about it, I'm wondering in my head, was Guru Dronacharya not following competency-based education in his ashram? Was Guru not really a competency-based education? We have this very good tendency of picking up new words, new terms but please, I would also suggest go down to your roots, go down into the old past. Okay, whatever the Guru did was learner-centric. Whatever he did was competency-based education. Arjun got what he deserved, and Yudhishthir got what he deserved. So I think the roots of competency-based education are in our tradition. That's what I would say.
Absolutely true, Atul. So a special thanks to all the panelists for such an interesting and invigorating session. You have given us so much food for thought. I would also like to extend our gratitude to all those who joined us today at Friday at 5. We request you to give your feedback in the form whose link has been shared by Priya in the chat box. Your feedback and suggestions are very valuable for us. Next weekend, we have another exciting round of conversation on parent-child relationship and its impact on learning with a distinguished panel. Enjoy your weekend, but don't forget to join us next week, same day, same time. See you then. Goodbye. Gule namaste. And Atul, you may like to add a few more versions of goodbye?
No.
The Turkish one I did add. I don't know whether it was correct. Yes, Robert?
All I say is hasta la vista, baby.
Okay.
I'll say it in Texan, which is y'all come back here now.
Y'all come back. I was Dr. Cannon, I was in New Orleans, so I was going to say something like that. Okay.
Well, I lived in Texas for 25 years before I came to Maine. So
y'all come back next week.
Yeah.
So I saw some of the chats where they were, saying that they're not able to register for the trainings or they have some queries. So Priya, if you could just post the email ID where they can write and contact us so that we can help them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm doing that.
Thank you and have a very good weekend, all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.